Hi, so in this screencast we're going to talk about Ajax within the context of Rails. Specifically, I'm going to cover two different ways of using Ajax on your Rails applications. One which comes right out of the box, and the second which involves a little bit more implementation of jQuery. So for this example, I have this basic web page that lists out some baseball players. So we have their name, a little description, and whether or not they've been linked to steroids. And so this is the field that we want to update. So right now, it is all done with a full page refresh. So you'll see when I go to change the status here, the browser is refreshing the page, and the attribute is updated. We have this checkbox is now checked. And also the color of this div has also changed just to indicate that there was a full page refresh. And so the first way that we're going to implement Ajax is through data remote true. So we'll go into the index page, and here you see we're iterating over each player. We have the name, bio, and whether or not they've been linked to steroids. Here is our form. So right in our form, we're going to add the options remote true. Then we're going to go into our controller. So our controller, we have our index, which lists all of our players. And then we have our update action, which finds the player, updates its attributes, and then responds given the format the request was sent in. And so here we're going to specify format.js. And format.js, kind of like format.html, is going to render a view. So the default view for this action is the update view. And so we need to add a update.js.erb view within the players folder. So let's go ahead and do that, update.js.erb. And then within this js.erb file, we are lucky enough to be able to use both Ruby and JavaScript. So we're going to first check whether that player has been linked to steroids. If they've been linked to steroids, what we want to do is we want to first grab that player's ID. So we have just to explain a little bit further what I'm doing here. On this index page, we have this span, right? And the span's ID is just the player's ID number. So we're going to change the content of that span to true or false. So let me go back to this update.js.erb. Here we're using jQuery to get the span's ID. We're getting that span, and we're going to set the HTML on that span to true. And just so we can see it also in the console, we're going to get the player's name, and we're going to say the player is associated with steroids. And if the player is not linked to steroids, so else, we're going to grab that. Well, let me just copy and paste here. So we're going to grab that span. We're going to change the HTML to false, and we're going to console that player is not associated with steroids. And we're going to end our if statement. So if we go back to our browser and we refresh the page, you see linked to steroids is false. We're going to change that status. You can see that it was changed to true. And if we go to our console, we'll see Alex Rodriguez is associated with steroids. All right, and you'll notice that there was no page refresh, and the color of this div did not change. So we can do that as many times as we'd like. It's super quick. It happens in the background. There's no page refresh. Cool. So that's one way of implementing Ajax in your Rails application. The The other way to implement Ajax in your Rails application is by using jQuery. And using jQuery using jQuery. So in this situation, in this case, I've written out some of the code already, and so I'm just going to walk through each line. So on line 2, we're listening for clicks on submit buttons, submit inputs, and on each click, we are setting a variable of the form that's related to that click. We're preventing default behavior, so we're preventing the form from submitting an HTML request. And then we're using jQuery's Ajax function. We're specifying the type of method, so we're specifying a put action. The URL is fetched from the form's attribute action. So if we go back to our web page and we check out the element, you'll see on the form, well, this is the data remote true, which we're going to remove, but you'll see the method is post here. So we're going to specify that we want to put action. The data that we're going to use, we're going to serialize. This is a handy jQuery method which will serialize all of the input values. We're going to specify the success and error callbacks. So on success, we're basically doing the same thing that we did in our update.js.erb file, except we're going to do it in players.js, which is housed under the assets directory in our application. And finally, we're going to remove remote true. And in our players controller, so not finally, in our players controller, we still have to respond to the format in which we're sending our request. And so we're going to respond to JSON by rendering we're going to render JSON, and we're going to render the player object that we have access to. And so, yeah, let's do that. So if we go to console, we change Alex Rodriguez's status, you'll see it's been changed to true. Alex Rodriguez is linked to steroids. If we go back here, we'll see Alex Rodriguez is linked to steroids. I even got this hi mom in here that I forgot to remove. But what's important to keep in mind here is this data object that comes back on success. And so if we console log this data object, we'll see that this is just a JSON representation of our @player object that we have here. So let's refresh this page. We're going to set it to false, and here we have the console log of Alex Rodriguez, the Alex Rodriguez object in JSON format. So we have Alex Rodriguez linked to steroids false, which basically makes sense with our Alex Rodriguez is no longer linked to steroids. And if we reset it to true, we'll see down here that this value is now true. So these are the two ways in which to implement Ajax in your Rails application. Preference for one or the other really depends on where you want to house your JavaScript. A lot of people find this to be using the views to be a lot simpler, and some people find the organization of including it within the assets directory to be much more clear and maintainable. So it's really up to you, but now you know that there are various options for using Ajax on your Rails applications.